say it's been a very powerful weekend here in Vegas. Somewhat of a coalition has been formed. It's really been incredible here. One thing I wanted to say about Juan O Savin, because a lot of people want to know, is he John F. Kennedy Jr.? The mask can be so amazing. You never know who somebody is. And they have these high level masks, and he has many disguises. He can look like me, bro. He can just, hey, I'm Prime. He can just walk around. He can do whatever he can look like Jerry. He can be, Kennedy can be anybody he wants. You have to understand that. You know what I'm saying? And people say, well, I don't know who, just relax. But one thing I can tell you about Mr. O Savin, because I actually rode around with him in his car, and the whole time I'm in the car and I'm looking at him like this. I'm literally just, everybody who sees him, they love him and respect him. And then they walk away like, is it him? But what I will tell you is that he is very Christ-like. Juan O Savin is very Christ-like. So if you really want to know anything about him, that's what you should really be concerned about. His nature is the nature of Christ. He has so much love, so much compassion and kindness and generosity and patriotism. It's ridiculous. It's just oozing out of him, and he's just a love being of light. He just radiates light, love, truth, hope, freedom. He just flows, and he's free and flowing, and he's also tremendously powerful. But at the same time, he will entertain regular people like me and Jerry and Jen, and he loves us, and he call him, hey Juan, he'll pick up, hey, what's up? You know what I'm saying? But it's beautiful, and it's an example for us to follow.
We're going to take our country back. We're going to cut the links out of their chains. We're going to remove them from our society. We will not be a captured operation anymore. We're going to realign ourselves with proper government, proper jurisdiction, proper authorities for good. We're going to get our house in order in America. That's what this moment is all about.
Welcome to Flyover Conservative Podcast with David and Stacey Whited.
And a follow-up on a live event that we were at this last weekend that was a pulling together of digital soldiers, people from all over the country, from politicians to actors to producers. And I'm not sure how we ended up in the room, but we're really blessed to do it and to increase our friendship with our special guest today. I want to tell you this. I mentioned this before, but a couple of housekeeping tips. As we go through some of the content today, it is sensitive information. This is inside baseball type of information. It's information that's very urgent. And so if you're watching this, if you're on YouTube, you're one of the podcast formats, share this directly in. So with that, introduce our guest, Mr. Juan O Savin.
Hey,
Juan, how are you doing?
Welcome.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Great.
Are you recovered yet from your exciting weekend?
Well, getting there. I learned that hanging with you takes a while. You know, we had a special dinner with you, and it was for maybe 3 hours just chiseling on things at the table and you know, going left and going right and zigging. I think you're going to zag, and mentally keeping up with you is a physical challenge.
He was exhausted.
This afternoon, I've got meetings with all of the technical staff on our 107daily.com. And of course, I talked to you behind the scenes just a moment ago about some of the developments there. They're pretty amazing, aren't they?
Yes.
Got big names.
I got to be careful what I say for now.
That's going to be exciting.
But for those listening, stay tuned to the 107 Daily, because there's going to be some big things happening on that.
I did this show almost a year ago on Jennifer Mack's channel, Choose This Day.
Yep, that's a
about
great
near-death experiences, and I compared what's going on in America and what was going to happen at the election with a near-death experience for America. Now, you look at what's going on and the way people talk and all the drama, and they're all upset about how America's about to have this near-death experience. It's a very traumatic thing. And all I'm saying is, even to the rest of your listeners, if you have a sense of expectation and you're looking for some guidance from above and you're praying, there's certain seasons where like the pool of Siloam, and the angel would stir the water and they'd try to jump in, and if they could get there when the water was stirred, they'd be healed. There's certain moments in time when there's a move of God, and if you're right there, you get to be part of some move of God, and there's a blessing that comes from that. Just like everybody that was there this last weekend, there was lots of people that we put the word out that, come on, join us, and they didn't show up. They had this, they had that, something happened, they didn't catch the plane, whatever. It doesn't mean that they're not godly or important or that whatever, but they're, for whatever reason, they weren't supposed to be in this particular phase. And from the gal that became very important, who's just caring for her parents, she doesn't work, she's not doing anything, she's living on a little Social Security, and she shows up and becomes a critical part of this thing, to the billionaire. Each person had a place in what happened. They really, really, really did. So it was like a called moment. It was so beautiful. And to be there and see it, the way it evolved was, just excellent. And this is going to continue to happen, because the next phase is the stuff that I won't get into right now, but is coming very shortly with the release of this movie, with a special event, and then the general release, and those that are there to go to that early part and be the people that present to the rest of the world. I think it's going to be one of the biggest movies ever released, maybe the biggest ever. Jim feels the same way. There's a certain moment in time when we must do what we must do to help these innocents, to help these children, to help these human trafficking victims. This is this moment that we're in, and we have an assignment, a mission from God. And this is that anointed moment. And we're going to be bringing more people into this, doing important things as we go out and be our brother's brother and save the world.
A once in a generation, once in a lifetime type of movie that takes something that people know exists and puts a face to it in a way that changes you, that you're never the same.
It's true. It's based on a true story. It's about sex trafficking, and at the end they give some stats that were pretty eye-opening. $150 billion industry with sex trafficking, more slaves now than any other time in history,
including when slavery was legal.
Yep. 2 million children taken each year. Those stats are just very sobering. You can't ignore it. You can't be like, oh, that was just a movie. No, this is real life, and it's happening, and it's something people don't like to talk about, but it is happening, and we have to talk about it.
Well, let me just say this. The very fact that just a simple call and a chance to revisit, COVID stopped the movie industry for a period of time. There had been conversation going on continuously, even various people seeing the movie in the industry, and thinking about what that release was, when would be the time, what would be the circumstances, blah blah blah, who's going to finance it, etc. But when the moment came, in my opinion, it came of age, and then there was a certain way that God wanted to do it. It's like what I said with what's happening in America. If it's seen as a move of man, if Trump saves America, that's destined for disaster. It's not about a man, even somebody that in some circles we may have great admiration for, etc. God doesn't want to share his move with any man.
Right.
This is going to be a move of God that saves America. This is all the people that showed up answered a call, but it wasn't for Jim Caviezel or me or any of the other players. It was to be part of an important, as I said the whole time, it was just about seeing the movie, a private screening, and then think about our way forward from there, and get a chance to rub shoulders with some other patriots and close ranks. And all of a sudden, just everybody shows up. When we do this next phase, which is a broader phase out across the country, I expect the same kind of a response for your audience and similar audiences to show up in this early phase and be counted and prepare, because what's going to come as the year goes on, especially starting in early spring, is that you're going to find out a lot of the evil and dastardly things that have been being done in your name as a nation and by people in positions of great power and authority, how they themselves were compromised, captured, honeypotted, blackmailed to do a lot of the things that they do. And it relates to this pedophilia and worse, the human trafficking, various horrible things, both here in the United States and around the world. And as those revelations come out, I think people's attitude is going to change radically about some of these people in positions of power and authority, and both here in the United States and around the world. When that happens, part of the understanding by people that don't normally, nice, proper people that don't get into this subject matter and they don't really, know that much about it. Well, maybe you have to know. Remember, in Israel, here you have the people that go into the promised land, they take over, they bring the walls of Jericho down and all this other stuff, and they occupy the land that God had for them. But the people that were there, these Canaanites, they were a very evil crowd, and they were doing horrendous things. They were making their children to pass through the flame. That is preacher talk for something far more dastardly. It makes it sound like, it was a Hollywood movie, two-dimensional on the big screen. It was the baby who went through the flames. They were roasting their children alive, sacrificing them to Baal and Moloch. These are Baal worshipers. They were horrendous, evil. They were sacrificing their children to this evil god so they could have a nice, rich harvest and have wealth and have success. And their God is going to bless them for sacrificing their children.
Just sick.
And yet, that doesn't happen in America. You haven't been watching the abortion clinics where people, it's going to be an inconvenience. This is going to be an inconvenience. This is not a this. It's
a person.
Human being. It's a child of God. You're selling your children for wealth, for a good harvest. God's children aren't for sale. When that is understood by people in flyover country and the cities equally, America will be on the path back to greatness, back to being who we were anointed to be from the beginning.
Doesn't, people don't wear T-shirts and say, "Hey, I'm a pedophile. Hey, I do these things." And Stacey mentions the 150
Well, that
billion.
might not be completely the case. Let me say this: they're getting more flamboyant all the time, and I know the whole thing about the Norse god bullshit on the tattoo on the guy at the Capitol during the riot. But you know what? That's a great cover story. The reality is that guy in the riot at the Capitol has a pedophilia symbol 3 times overlapped itself on his chest. Excuse me, I'm not buying the rest of the story. You can try to sell it. I'm not buying it.
It's in the lyrics. It's in the music videos.
He is.
Yep.
Okay, go
it's
look
all
at
over.
the picture. Go look at the CNN, look at the guy's chest, and then tell me that's not a pedophile symbol. Then the FBI is looking everywhere. Hey, there's a person that was there rioting. He's from Kansas, and we're going to stop him from ever flying on a plane to Washington, D.C. again, because his cell phone shows he was somewhere on the street at the Capitol. Are you kidding me? And you got the guy that's got, look, the FBI, all you got to do is go into the FBI's website, the imagery, the symbolism of pedophilia. And right there in the symbolism is the triangle that goes into this concentric closing turns in the triangle. And it's a pedophile symbol. And the guy's got 3 of them on his chest, and he's there at the riots taking down the Capitol. And oh, by the way, we have some of these same players, and they're at BLM rallies and all this stuff. Something's wrong. They're trying to paint us a certain way that isn't true, isn't truly who we are, and infiltrate our ranks.
I think that this movie is going to usher that in, something that people wouldn't normally talk about at a dinner or at maybe a Sunday school class or some of these places. They're not going to talk about the darkest things that could happen, but it's time that they did, and this movie is going to set the table for those conversations to take place.
It's true.
So now we go back to when we're going to have a couple guys sitting around the table having a conversation, try to think about marketing. And it turns into 400 people show up on, 3-4 days notice for this private showing. Those that were called, and I would say that you folks, there was a calling on your being present that wasn't, from man, it was from God, that you needed to be there, not just for yourself, but for this audience that you're speaking to right now. You needed to be able to articulate, to converse about this, and it's kind of a layered response. God is calling certain of those people who are in hinge positions to be the mouthpiece, to vocalize to them, this you have to go be part of, you have to attend, you have to be counted. And what's that about? We'll do this, pre-release release at a certain point, and those people that are in your audience should come see this, understand what's said, and then be ready to have the broader conversation with their friends, their relatives, the other people that may not really understand or know this subject matter, but need to, because it's going to be a big part of the public conversation in America and around the world in the months to come, and out through the remainder of this year. The Epstein stuff, that trial is going to continue on. There's going to be all sorts of new disclosures. Certain other stuff from the political realm, players, business realm, etc., is going to be revealed related to these crimes against children. And even though it's subject matter that might not be, pleasant, it still has to be discussed. Part of the issue with the marketing on the movie, because you can't do it for nothing. It costs money to do this stuff. People invested to make this movie, and they need to have that return, so they have money to do the next one. Everybody thinks that God's people should do everything they do and give it all away for free. Well, some of us can do that, and others of us can't. And it's in order to have the money, they're doing another movie to follow on this one that's even more important, way more important. I don't want to get into the details of it but you understand the subject matter. You go, oh my gosh! And this movie was compelling. The next one will be amazing in going deeper and understanding it and revealing things. But they got to be able to do it. It costs, tens and tens of millions of dollars to do something like this. Certain people have a calling to handle the finance stuff. And they do it. They get a reasonable return. We as Christians, as persons of faith or whatever, we go, we shoulder up and pay something for our part to do it, to promote the people that bring these things to light, that go out and do this stuff. They're doing a service to us. I'll pay that money every day and go in there and have and support people that are bringing truth out. You know, in the thumbnail you did today, what's this about? This is about people speaking the truth. Well, I'm going to support those people. So those people that went and made a movie to explain to us what's really going on, to bring the truth of this to some type of reality so we could feel it. I mean, you went to the movie. Did you feel the emotions of each person? Could you have gotten that just in a conversation on the internet? Well, maybe you could have. But then again, it's a bit more surface. It's a bit thinner. To see it portrayed as it actually happened, and to see the drama. And remember, even what you saw was actually quite a bit detuned, because it has to be at least showable to a general audience. There's a lot of aspects to it that you just can't show it.
Right.
They do a beautiful job too of not showing anything graphically that might, say, trigger somebody with that weakness. You know, there's nothing, there's, you know, nothing of a sexual nature in it, but you know what's happening, you know what takes place. It was done tastefully, but it is still, if you have an ounce of goodness in you, if you've ever had a grandchild or a child, or, you know, it's painful to sit in a little bit, because you want to look away. You almost want to walk out, you know, of like, oh, you know, this is happening. And the acting in it is just phenomenal. Every single person in it is a high level person.
And they did a great job. And, you know, it does take, you know, you don't just get up when the credits start rolling. You know, it's like, it's just soaking it all in, you know, and wow, okay, this is really deep. And you're right, Juan, it's way more than just a conversation. When you see it, when you're there, it really puts something in you to want to show up and speak up. You know, it's like, okay, I'm showing up, I'm here now, I'm going to speak up against this, you know, because you're very deeply convicted. Once you know it, you can't turn back and be like, oh, I don't know that. You already know it, so therefore you have to take action.
You know, Juan, I have a question for you.
Well,
go ahead. At the end of the movie, you know, we had the conversation, we were talking there with Jim Caviezel, and he made the expression, he said, this will be earth-shattering when you see who's all involved. When people see the size, the scale, and the scope of this. I think the movie sets the table for exposure. Now, those were all real people. That movie is based on actual real events that took place. But it opens the door for people to have now maybe a mental and an emotional vocabulary to process what's actually going to be revealed in front of all of us, I think, on a much bigger scale. What's kind of your words?
Well, let me
just say it.
The reason that this went the way it did, I actually do put it in some kind of a divine move, a pointed moment, that there's some aspect of this that's way beyond you or I or any of the people that were directly involved. There was something else, because we need this tool in order to, it's part of an awakening process for the broader American public and the rest of the world. You have to pick a lane. You have to pick a side. You can't be, on the fence about it. And so it personalizes it. It challenges, and you can't be complacent about it, or it doesn't happen around me, or I don't have anything, there's nothing I can do about it. You'll see the movie, you'll understand. If you're called to see the movie, you'll understand. This isn't just for really literally just the presidency. It isn't even just for the United States. The whole world is hanging on these next few moments.
Yes.
And what has to happen. Are we going to let the bank robbers get away, get down the street, get around the corner? If the bomb blows up in the bag full of cash and they got blue dye all over them, okay, they're marked. Does that, change anything? How do you do that? What's the next piece of the puzzle? I don't want to go way deep in the weeds here on your show right now. I did a show with Prim and Jen. You met him. He actually goes by Prime, but they mispronounced it. A victim of a public school education. His name is really Prim. He didn't even know it. But you met Prim and Jen this weekend, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Beautiful, beautiful, fun folks. They had a show I did last week. If you go listen to that show, I get into the mechanics of exactly what the sequence is to restore President Trump to the presidency, and then do the arrests and checking of what's got to happen next. So if you want to get, for those people who are going, well, give me details, I did it. Go over there, Prim and Jen, listen to their show and get the details. I'm trying to give some of the broad principles here, and there's, sometimes people get too into the details. Your life, what God's telling you to do, might not be what he wants the next person to do. For example, you got to be at this event this weekend. You had the capability, you had the wherewithal, you were called, you talked to a very large audience. It was necessary in this broader structure of what God's doing that you be there. There was other people that somebody say, well, the gal who takes care of her parents in Denver, is she critical to God's operation? Somewhere she is, because she showed up. God called her. Okay, I don't know what that is. God knows. Sometimes it's the person you least expect who's the most important in some detail of what happens. And then compare that to the United States as a whole, because this is what all these people, I had a phone call this morning from somebody that everybody in your audience would know exactly who this person is. They could not have lived in America and not know who this person is. And they were hand wringing, they were sweating, they were all upset, but why, but it's not, but how can this happen? How can do all these executives? It's all over, it's the end. And you can't, it's how you should just, we should all be in crying and tears because it's all over. No, it can't get solved. It's over. And I'm like, in God's world, over isn't a word. If he wants to move, it's going to happen. And do we all know the exact specifics? God likes to save some of these things so he gets the glory. Everybody that showed up had a mission, had a calling. They're supposed to be there. Everybody that shows up in these later things, they're on a mission. They have a calling. They're supposed to be there. They're going to be part of a move of God. You want to help save the children, you got to be part of the message. Everywhere you put the sole of your foot, you're going to take your country back and take back the planet. But each person, I don't know what your mission is precisely. A lot of people would think that, well, I didn't get to go to the one in Las Vegas, so now it's all over with. No, it's just starting. You plant your crops at different elevations based on, when it warms up. Lower altitudes, you can plant earlier. Higher altitudes, you got to wait a little longer. It's the right season for other people in other parts of the country. When it's right, it's right. And the rest of your audience needs to show up on that day. Look, when God calls, you got to answer. I believe a lot of your audience is going to be called here shortly to do something, to take some action, to respond in some way. When he calls you, be ready to answer. And if you do, there's a blessing somewhere in there for showing up. So, you guys got blessed because you got some new contacts. You had some fun. It was very interesting. Is it exclusive? I don't think so. I think that's where a lot of people misunderstand. What God has in mind for you is not the same thing as he has in mind for me. So trying to convolute things, trying to mix up those messages. Look, wherever you're at any given day, part of the reason you were there over the weekend is because you'd answered other calls of God faithfully other times in your life. How many times when you answered it and then it led to the opportunities that led to being there this weekend? You start somewhere. And part of that's going to be answering a call of God over these next weeks and months and year, as we move through the process, not just of taking our country back in some figurative way, but taking a stand, being counted, shouldering up to occupy our land for our people, and to push out these people who are occupying us for foreign enemies, who are occupying us for people who have dastardly purposes and want to lord them over us and to control us and to shut us up. You know, an
Wow.
occupying army, once you've won the war, you still have to occupy the city and own those streets so the enemy doesn't filter back in. Evil things are being done all across the country because people aren't standing up and being counted. Oh, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. They're going to see me. They're going to do something against me. They're going to take action against me. I got to hide my cell phone. I got to, go find a deeper, bomb shelter to hide in. No, we're going to take our country back. We're going to own it once again. And somehow, that may not be understandable, each person has a different calling of God on them. So whatever does God give the same mission to every one of us? No. Everybody has to show up. It's not, you get a corner piece, you get a key color piece. That was stuff that happened this weekend. But now everybody else we got a couple pieces of the puzzle, but it's far from done. Well, we're going to do some events that are intended to provide the opportunity for everybody else to show up to fill in the puzzle pieces in getting America back on track and to pushing these enemies out to where there's no place left for them. There's a song by, I think, Guns N' Roses. And in my mind, I hear that song and it's demons crying out, because what's the song? Where will we go now? Where will we go now? It's like somebody has died and the demons have to go find another body to possess. Where will I go now? Where will we go now? If America stands up and is counted, these demons forced out of our country, out of our land. And where will they go now? Are we going to just let them go into the swine on the hill, or are they going to hell? We're going to take our country back, but everybody has to stand up and be counted. And it could be out in flyover country, Kansas, or Nebraska, or Iowa, or Montana, or Colorado, or it could be in the middle of the densest jungles in New York and New Jersey and Los Angeles. And each one of the people has to show up. If you're called by God, you got to show up.